If we're going to get behind a regime change, it should be in Israel first.
All right, you heard it there first, everybody. Candace Owens calling for a regime change in Israel, and I can't say I disagree with her. So this pretty heated conversation between Piers Morgan and Candace Owens, and really Candace Owens just absolutely running circles around him. Every bullshit argument, every bullshit talking point that Piers has, she's quick to come back and shut it down, and she's actually stringing together some, very logical sort of cause and effect understanding of what's going on here. So without further ado, I'll let the conversation play out. We'll have some thoughts throughout, but without further ado, here we go.
He killed Baghdadi, the head of ISIS, and went after them ferociously. He attacked Syria when they killed American troops. He dropped a massive bomb in Afghanistan. It wasn't like he never deployed the American military. And again, here, what he would argue, and has been arguing, is he's not declared war on anybody. What he's done is very specifically target Iran's nuclear capability because of latest reports coming out, which said they had taken the enrichment of their uranium stocks from 3.5% to 60%, and that therefore the leap to weaponization was moving at a pace that couldn't be tolerated. I got to say, I kind of agree. Now, if he suddenly commits, troops on the ground, then that becomes a different thing altogether. But even when Trump talked about regime change, I think he meant from within, as we saw in Syria in December, where the people themselves rise up. And if that was to happen, why would that be a bad thing?
Okay, so you're asking a lot of questions here. So first and foremost, the idea that you have to formally declare war on like a piece of paper in order for war to happen is a little bit ridiculous. I mean, he dropped bombs. He dropped bombs in Iran. So yes, we are a part of this war, whether we like it or not. Iran is now speaking and saying that they're going to shut down the Hormuz Strait. There's going to be impact on oil.
Why would they do that? Why would they do that when the main victim of doing that would be Iran? I mean, 50% of China, of the traffic of stuff through there is for China, which is one of their allies.
Don't care, not my business. The point that I'm making here is that to make the assumption that you can just drop bombs on a country and then say, well, you know what, we didn't formally declare war is patently ridiculous. I think that is just patently ridiculous.
What about when he killed General Soleimani, one of Iran's top military commanders?
Sure, an assassination, a strike, and that, of course, came with some risk. It's a little bit different to be flying out B-6 bombers in the middle of the night and dropping bombs at the behest of Bibi Netanyahu, which brings me to the second point. The reason that America wants a regime change in Iran is because Bibi Netanyahu is demanding it. And that answers the question as to why there is this split in the MAGA movement. What we are seeing right now is the infiltration of Israel first people, the neocons, people who have always wanted never-ending wars, and the people who have recognized that following Israel's foreign policy initiatives has led to America being on the decline. And so that's where I stand. I am with the MAGA people who grew up, I call us Generation 9/11, who were told that America was going to be rendered safer, cleaner. All we had to do was agree to go to, well, ironically, war with Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction. It's all of the same rhetoric dating back to 9/11, all of the same tactics of trying to smear people who are against this war as supporting jihadists. It is not my business to affect a regime change in Iran. It's simply not our business. It doesn't impact us one way or the other. And we also are completely done with the idea that with these decades-long idea that we're doing it to spread democracy because we believe in international liberalism. There was no imminent threat to the United States when Trump made this decision to do what Bibi wanted. And I want to be clear here. This was not Trump's decision. It was Bibi Netanyahu's decision. And that is the reason that he did it. And we're very aware that Israel is dictating our foreign policy, and we would now like that to stop.
Okay, but you wouldn't disagree, presumably, that Iran has been the main sponsor of terrorism in the Middle East through the Houthis, through Hezbollah, through Hamas. I mean, that's widely accepted and recognized. Things
widely accepted. Now, that's just kind of...
Really? You don't think they have?
has been a terrorist state. Okay, Israel right now is imparting a genocide and a Holocaust on the Gazan people. So I'm really over this idea like somehow Israel has the moral high ground and we have to get behind them.
I didn't say
because
that.
We've got to go after the bad guys.
I wasn't saying that.
But we have.
Oh, hang on. Look, we can come to Gaza where I think we'll reach agreement about what Israel's government's been doing there in the last few months. Without
But it's
any
relevant.
question.
If you're going to call Iranians terrorists, if they right now had an open concentration camp where they were mass killing their own people, we would all be saying this is ridiculous. So it's rich to me that people are concerned about Iran having nukes. What I'm concerned about Israel, who won't even admit that they have nukes, having nukes, while at the same time they are executing a genocide and a Holocaust in Gaza that the world is watching. So who's the bigger terrorist is the question today. I would say as an American that if we're going to get behind a regime change, it should be in Israel first. So that would be my position. I think the position of a lot of people who are waking up to the fact that Zionism has brought us nothing but grief in America. Can you name one positive thing that Zionists have contributed to America? That us fighting these perpetual wars on behalf of Zionism has contributed to America?
But can you also recognize that Israel, placed where it is as a tiny thumbprint in the middle of a region where you have massive countries full of a lot of people that want to wish them harm, and in the case of the terror groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, actually want to get rid of Israel and all Israelis altogether, can you accept that if you have a huge nation like Iran with 90 million people, and they are facilitating the terror groups to that purpose, that Iran has to defend itself? Now, I would not disagree with you about what has been going on in Gaza in the last few months. I've been very vocal in my criticism of that. Nor do I disagree, by the way, that it wouldn't help Israel if they did have regime change and Netanyahu wasn't prime minister anymore. So on those points, I think we have agreement. But I come back to the fact that the reason Trump has done this, I think, is that he has for a long time said Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. I think he's absolutely right to believe that would be a pretty terrifying escalation of the power of a country that's been so wedded to terrorism in the region. And I think he took the action for that reason. So I don't really agree that he's only doing it because Bibi Netanyahu wants him to go along and do it. I think he's doing it because he believes it's in America's strategic interest that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, it is not in America's strategic interest. There was no imminent threat. He could have taken this to Congress and he could have allowed the people's representatives to vote on whether or not
nobody does
it was
that.
in the American people. There was
no president in living memory has, with almost zero exceptions, has bothered to get congressional pre-approval for military strikes. We know that. You know that.
Yeah, we know that. And that's not okay. By the way, that's not okay.
Obama
That's
did more strikes than anybody, right?
Yes,
I mean, Obama never asked anybody for any permission.
I'm not an Obama supporter. Yeah, that doesn't make it okay. By the way, like that argument, just so we're clear, saying, well, we've been doing it wrong forever, so we should just keep doing it wrong is not an argument that it's right.
I don't disagree with you about that.
Okay, so I disagree with Obama doing it. I disagree with Trump doing it.
Enough.
And especially when what we're talking about is what could rise to be a nuclear war, right? We should have done things the right way. And he had indicated that he was going to wait 2 weeks, and then he didn't wait 2 weeks because Bibi Netanyahu, at least according to the Israeli press, if you believe it, said, we're not waiting 2 weeks. We want this done immediately. But I will say you are correct. He's not just doing this because Bibi Netanyahu demands it. He's also doing it because Miriam Adelson demands it. He took $100 million from Miriam Adelson. It was very clear what she wanted. She was clear that she wanted to annex the West Bank. So there was an imperialist plan that was put into place. And unfortunately, when you do a deal with the devil, you're going to have to eventually deliver the pound of flesh. And that is what Trump is doing, in my opinion. And more evidence of that is the fact when he tweeted that there could be a Trump hotel in Gaza. I mean, that was truly, in my opinion, the most inhumane thing he's ever tweeted.
Well, I think it was pretty clear what he was doing there was pretty clear. He's saying he wants a better life for Palestinian people, a life where they have beaches,
well, when you
and they
pair
have
that
hotels,
with Jared
and they have golf
Kushner
courses.
and Jared Kushner's private equity firm and their ties to what's happening in Israel, and Jared Kushner being on camera shortly after October 7th saying, wow, that property could be worth a lot of money. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable. It makes Americans a little bit uncomfortable now.
I got to be honest, man. I'm very shocked to hear Candace Owens talking like this. Welcome to Cartagena, by the way. I'm shocked to be agreeing with Candace Owens in this way. I'm shocked that she's calling out Trump to such an extent and sort of just mentioning the whole donor, corruption situation. He's taken hundreds of millions of dollars from, Israel lobbyists and, the most famous Israel donors on the planet, and that he is just carrying out their policy, step for step. I'm surprised, and I'm also surprised to the extent that Piers Morgan is just playing this dumb dummy the whole time. Um, like the fact that he has Candace Owens running circles around, and not to take anything away from Candace Owens intellectually, she's clearly very smart, but she's obviously been on the wrong side of a number of issues, including when we're talking about like climate change, when she was famously on Joe Rogan several years ago, and a litany of other topics that I would say she's just hilariously misinformed about. She's been one of the only conservative voices that have been railing very strongly, stronger than even some of the people on the left, about this whole Israel Gaza situation. And now again with the Iran situation, calling it out for exactly what it is. And when Piers Morgan is again bringing up this bullshit like, well, he didn't, it's not an official war. He didn't officially, it's not written down on paper that we are officially at war. And Candace is like, what? You have to write it down on paper to say that you're at war? What about the actual fact of dropping bombs on people's heads, of killing people and annihilating facilities and raining terror down? Is that not an act of war? Are we not part of this entire war effort now? Is that not millions, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars that was just spent on these operations that could have spiraled in and that still could spiral down into more escalation, because we're not sure exactly how this ceasefire situation is going to go. So Piers Morgan just doing an absolutely abysmal job of fully flushing out and understanding the situation. Even when he's mentioning the Gaza situation, he can only say, well, only going back a few months, I would say I disagree with the tactics that Israel has been using, when the reality is they've been using the same indiscriminate tactics basically since October 8th. So do with that what you will, but Candace Owens is absolutely just running circles around him, this whole, movement, the whole neocon movement. And yeah, exactly. What have the Israel first, Zionists gotten for us except chaos and war and just shitty, to put it lightly, just the shittiest of all policies. So very, very interesting to be agreeing with Candace Owens, but that is what it is.
You've asked me to come onto your show to explain to you how the now very fractured MAGA movement is feeling, and I'm telling you that, right?
No, it's really. I find, honestly,
I do also.
I find it really. I find the
question.
split in the conservative movement in America genuinely fascinating, because it
and
really
it's
is a genuine schism now.
Yeah, there's a genuine schism, and it's only going one direction. And by the way, we shouldn't even call this a schism, because trying to dress this up and delude us into believing that the MAGA movement is what has Meghan McCain cheering, John Bolton cheering, has Mark Levin cheering. The literal faces of the Never Trump movement are saying this is real MAGA. Yeah, we're not going to be that delusional.
But you're on the same side as Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. How do you feel about that?
You're asking about the MAGA movement. The MAGA movement has always been a movement that explicitly did not want to keep involving our sons and daughters in the Middle East. So we have not changed that position. If AOC was always anti-war, then she should have thrown on a red hat in 2020 and in 2015 and joined the MAGA movement. That would have been fantastic.
But are you saying America should never use any military action? You're on the same side as Greta
Thunberg when it comes to the Palestinians
being
but
are you saying,
murdered
Candace,
every day.
are you saying,
I am. I'm aligned.
Okay, but are you saying that America should never use any military action then?
No. I'm not saying America can never use any military action. In fact, what I said earlier was I could get behind a regime change in Israel, because I think it.
Again, what a ridiculous question. Like what's up with these 100% or nothing questions? Like, of course, like if Nazis are storming across, Europe, or like any number of hypothetical situations where, sure, a military force could be justified. They could go through the legal process. They could vote on it, and we could get involved. The American people could get behind it, and we could do it. But to just put these ridiculous, all or nothing scenarios out. I love the fact that that Candace is calling for regime change in Israel. I find absolutely hilarious, because she's completely right. That is the exact place where there needs to be regime change. Whether or not we're gonna, obviously that's not going to be a military option, but the Israelis need to, even though the Israelis are, fascists at this point, and they support what's going on in Gaza, and they support Netanyahu and the far right fascist movements. So good luck getting that regime changed. But yeah, that's pretty hilarious.
it would fix a lot of issues that are happening and it has been happening to America over time. Like I
But
said,
why
America
wouldn't you want
has
it in
been
Iran? I
on
mean,
the
I'm reading an Amnesty International report from 2024.
because Iran.
But why wouldn't
America
you
has
want it in
been
Iran? I
on
mean,
the
I'm reading an Amnesty International report from 2024.
Because Iran is not
on.
negatively impacting. I'm answering your question because Iran's regime is not negatively impacting America on a day-to-day basis.
When the leader
is not Iran is not negatively impacting. I'm answering your question because Iran's regime is not negatively impacting. I'm answering your question because Iran's regime is not negatively impacting America on a day-to-day basis.
When the leader of Iran says death to America, why doesn't that concern you?
That's a chant. And by the way, I want to be very clear. Why are they chanting death to America? Why are they chanting that? That's kind of a random thing. Like I don't wake up one day and go like,
dead?
But why do they want? Why are they specifically chanting as opposed to saying, I don't know, death to China or death to Russia? What is it specifically about America?
Well, they say death to America, death to Israel, death to the United Kingdom, actually.
Oh, okay.
Death to pretty much anyone that wants to stand up to them.
Could have had something to do with our actions in the Middle East is why I'm saying that we need a change in foreign policy. It maybe has something to do with just like killing 1 million Iraqi civilians, okay, because Bibi Netanyahu got on a congressional stage and said there are weapons of mass destruction, and we took that to the bank, and there actually were no weapons of mass destruction, so we just killed 1 million. It could have something, I could be crazy, it could have something to do with our actions in the Middle East. The fact that we have 2,000 troops stationed in Syria right now under the guise of saying that we're fighting ISIS, while at the same time we know that Bibi Netanyahu funded the Al-Qaeda adjacent front because he wanted to overthrow Syria. And they, again, expand their borders, immediately take on territory and sell us absolute nonsense. We're talking about funding Hamas. Bibi Netanyahu funded Hamas. There is footage of Bibi Netanyahu saying this stuff on camera. So it's just so ridiculous to me to pretend that they're in some predicament, that they may be eradicated soon, which is why they have to keep funding all of these terrorist groups and then pretending that they're victims of terror, when in fact they are the people that are imparting it worldwide. You know, I just think that, like I said, Generation 9/11 has grown up, and I think that our eyes are very clear here, and we recognize that our relationship with Israel has become increasingly problematic, and it always was problematic. So I'll again ask the questions, Piers. I'm asking you because we're having a conversation. Yeah. Name something positive that our Zionist AIPAC foreign policy has brought to America.
Well, I think the positive side of, if you want an answer about that, is that America has been Israel's steadfast ally because it recognizes as a country that Israel has been under an almost unique, multifaceted threat on its border for a very long time from people that want to destroy it. And, you know, that you may not see that as a benefit, but Israel has been very supportive to the United States in many ways. Right. So why shouldn't America?
I just want something concrete that has been benefit. Like, we got better in America in this way. Just name something. Gas prices, just something that the average American can relate to.
Well, you're not going to have a correlation between Zionism and gas prices in America. Of course, you're not.
No, I'm just giving you an example. Just tell me one thing that they have to treat. Because what your argument here is like, well, you get a pat on the back and you can say that you helped this country, which was formed in 1948 by pretending to be refugees, if you will, and being invited into the homes of Palestinians, the horrific story
of what happened. Well, they weren't pretending to be refugees. They were people fleeing a Holocaust.
Let's be clear. Let me finish my statement.
What do you mean pretending to be refugees?
Let me finish my statement. When I say pretending to be refugees and being invited into the home, you would think that these people were helpless and were going to be grateful to the people that hosted them. People like Muhammad Hadid, Bella Hadid and Gigi Hadid's father, who was an infant at this time in his mother's arms. She had just given birth. They had invited these refugees because of the goodness of their heart. And then one day they return home and their doors are locked and they are told that if you try to enter, you are going to be shot and killed. That is the reality of how Israel was established as a state. Okay, that is not a stain that you can wipe from history. Most Americans growing up actually believe what happened was that, okay, it was a little messy. That's what happens after wars. Borders get changed. But at the very least, they were given money. I mean, you've lived here for hundreds of years. Here's money for your property. No, that's not what happened. They were forced out of their homes at gunpoint.
Listen,
and it's wrong. So we get to be the nation pat on the back. According to you, the thing that America gets. Let me finish. I'm going to let you finish. It's your show. We can. But let me finish. But But your argument is that what we get to be is that nation that keeps supporting it as they continue to move their borders in this way. Now we're seeing that incursion into Gaza, and we are certainly going to see it by the end of this administration in the West Bank, because like I said, that is why Miriam Adelson gave Trump $100 million.
Look, as you know.
All right, we're going to leave it at that for now. There you have it. Candace Owens dealing at it with Piers Morgan. Absolutely riveting debate. Yeah, finding myself agreeing with Candace Owens on a lot of stuff. Very, very rare. It was very disturbing for me to feel that way. But when somebody's right, you got to give them credit. So at least in that faction of the MAGA movement, they are on the right side of things, and you can respect them for that. So let me know what you guys think of the conversation. What do you think of the current ceasefire? How do you think that's going to play out? And what do you think happens next? Drop a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.